Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit and the cop.
No one inside the paddock expected the atmosphere in Valencia to shift the way it did. It began with something simple, almost quiet, a smile. Not from a rookie trying to impress, not from a team manager sealing a deal, but from Jorge Lorenzo, someone who rarely gives anything away unless he knows exactly why he's doing it. When the cameras caught that expression on his face during the postseason test, people started whispering. Something was coming, something big. And at the center of it all stood a rider whose name had been shouted, doubted, admired, and feared in equal measure. Toprak Razgatlioglu, a champion from another world, stepping into MotoGP with the kind of weight usually reserved for legends, not newcomers. Lorenzo's smile wasn't casual. It was a signal that the landscape of the premier class was about to twist in ways no one was fully prepared for. Yet behind that expression, even he seemed to understand that what was unfolding could reshape the competitive order for years to come. Long before this moment, Toprak had lived in an entirely different rhythm. He wasn't shaped by academies or polished development programs. He was shaped by chaos, by noise, by the raw energy of growing up beside a father who made a name for himself not through trophies, but through fearlessness. His father, known as Tekker Arif, rode with a kind of wild precision that made people step back and stare. That was the world Toprak grew up in. Not luxury, not structure. A world of sliding tires, rising front wheels, and the constant understanding that one mistake could erase everything. When his father passed away, the world that once felt like a playground suddenly became a proving ground. He didn't just want to ride to win, he wanted to ride to honor something larger than himself. That hunger shaped him through the European Superstock ladder, into WorldSBK, and eventually toward the reputation that now defines him. A terrifyingly fast, late-breaking animal who bends physics until it listens. But the universe rarely lets a story rise without introducing something that tries to break it. In WSBK, that force arrived wearing Ducati red. Álvaro Bautista tore through the championship like a storm, leaving rivals in disbelief as he stacked win after win. Critics claimed his dominance proved the championship was weaker than MotoGP. But Jorge Lorenzo saw something different, something most people missed. Bautista's performance wasn't a downgrade. It was evidence that the dynamics of Superbike were far more complex than its critics understood. If Bautista, winless in MotoGP, could transform into a machine in WSBK, then what did it say about someone like Toprak, who not only survived in that same arena, but conquered it, and did so against a Ducati package many thought unbeatable? It was a question that lingered over every paddock conversation, a quiet tension that suggested the Turkish rider might be far more dangerous than the outside world realized. That question took on new weight when Toprak made a decision that left the entire racing industry stunned. After winning titles and building a legacy with Yamaha, he walked away. Not to join a guaranteed contender, not to chase a bigger contract, but to join BMW, a manufacturer fighting to escape years of frustration and inconsistency. Many called it reckless, some called it foolish. Yet for Toprak, it was a challenge worth embracing. The first months were brutal. He complained that the bike felt unstable, unpredictable, almost like trying to race on an icy track. But each struggle only sharpened his resolve. Engineers tore into the project, reshaping the electronics, refining the aero, and building a machine that responded to Toprak's extreme braking style rather than forcing him to abandon it. Within seasons, BMW went from outsiders to champions, and Toprak became something even more compelling, a rider who could take a broken project and carry it on his back until it became a monster. But this success raised the question the paddock had been whispering for years. When will he finally jump into MotoGP? Fans waited, teams waited. Journalists repeated the same debates every year, analyzing every quote, every rumor, every test. Then it happened. Yamaha opened the door, offering him a chance to test the M1. For most riders, touching a MotoGP bike is a moment of awe, but Toprak climbed off the machine with doubt instead of excitement. The braking zones felt wrong. The Michelin tires demanded an entirely different connection to the asphalt. The electronics, the cornering philosophy, the smoothness required, none of it matched the violent precision that made him unbeatable in Superbike. Instead of forcing himself into a mold he didn't trust, he walked away and doubled down on BMW. That refusal shocked both Yamaha and MotoGP fans. Some said he wasn't ready. Others said MotoGP wasn't ready for him. And maybe both were true, at least at that moment. But behind the curtain, his manager, Kenan Sofuoglu, was far from idle. Conversations started flowing in every direction. Honda wanted to rebuild. Yamaha wanted redemption. BMW wondered whether their star would stay long enough for them to consider entering MotoGP in the new 2027 era. Every meeting had weight. Every rumor stirred the paddock. But the discussions with Pramac were different. Quiet at first, persistent, strategic. And when the puzzle pieces finally clicked, the results stunned almost everyone. Toprak would join Pramac Yamaha starting in 2026, the first Turkish rider in MotoGP history. A WSBK megastar stepping into a project that needed resurrection more than reinforcement. It wasn't a safe move. It wasn't easy, but it was exactly the kind of challenge Toprak had always run toward. Yet as he stepped into the MotoGP universe, he wasn't joining a Yamaha team in its golden era. He was stepping into one of the most difficult rebuilding phases the manufacturer had ever faced. Wins had dried up. Podiums were rare. Developments lagged behind Ducati and the Europeans. Michelin's unique behavior punished the weaknesses of the M1. Even the smooth, precise riders struggled. Lorenzo knew this, and behind his excitement there was a thread of caution. He admired Toprak's talent deeply, but the transition he was about to face would be brutal. The riding style that made him iconic, extreme braking, late entries, violent direction changes, would meet a prototype machine that demanded totally different instincts. Yamaha's engineers worked to reinvent the package. They knew this wasn't just a technical challenge, it was an identity crisis. Inside Pramac's garage, the tension only grew. Jack Miller, returning to Yamaha machinery after years on European bikes, brought his own fire to the project. He was a veteran with scars, victories, disappointments, and a sense of humor sharp enough to cut steel. And across from him stood Toprak, carrying the expectations of an entire nation. Two riders with completely different backgrounds, two riding philosophies, two personalities that would inevitably collide, not in hostility, but in ambition. Because both knew the stakes. Pramac needed results. Yamaha needed a miracle. And every mechanic, every engineer, every sponsor had eyes locked on the same question. Which rider would adapt first? And which one would shape the direction of the project? Meanwhile, fans from every corner of the racing world threw fuel onto the fire. WSB loyalists insisted Toprak would shock MotoGP. MotoGP fans doubted he could tame the Michelin front. BMW supporters felt betrayed. Yamaha fans saw him as a salvation figure. Every race weekend would push his emotions into a pressure cooker that no simulator, no test program, no paddock rumor could prepare him for. Because in MotoGP, pressure doesn't come from one direction, it comes from everywhere. And Toprak, stepping into a world filled with politics, data battles, tire temperature crises, and the brutal honesty of prototypes, would feel it from the moment he rolled out of pit lane. But the greatest twist was still ahead, because the world wasn't just watching Toprak enter MotoGP. It was watching him enter at the very edge of the sport's biggest reset. The 2027 regulation overhaul loomed like a shadow over every decision. Smaller engines, reduced aero, A reset that could shake the hierarchy, erase advantages, and give underdogs a real shot. Whispers suggested BMW might enter MotoGP under these new rules. Engineers, journalists, and insiders all wondered whether the German brand would finally bring its factory might into the paddock. And if they did, the narrative wrote itself. The rider who carried BMW to glory in WSB could have led their MotoGP revolution. But he chose Yamaha. He chose Pramac. He chose a project that needed rebuilding, not one that promised a blank slate. For Toprak, none of this mattered as the calendar crept closer to his debut. The theories, the predictions, the doubts, it all faded once the helmet went on. The real battle would happen on track. Each braking zone would test whether his legendary skills could be translated to Michelin tires. Each corner exit would reveal whether he could adapt his aggression to MotoGP traction. Each race would show whether his instincts, shaped by years of chaos and brilliance, could evolve in a world built on millimeters and microseconds. And maybe that was exactly why Lorenzo smiled that day in Valencia. Not because he expected Toprak to dominate, or because he believed the transition would be easy, but because he understood the deeper truth of MotoGP. The sport doesn't need more predictable stories. It needs riders who bring electricity, riders who force the narrative to bend, riders who make even the veterans lean forward and say, quietly, let's see what happens next. So, as the lights prepare to go out on Toprak Razgatlioglu's first season in MotoGP, one question hangs heavier than all the others. He's finally stepping onto the sport's biggest stage. He's carrying the hopes of manufacturers, teams, and millions of fans. He's entering at a moment when the formula is unstable, the future uncertain, and the path full of traps. And everyone in the paddock knows exactly what's at stake. Because if he adapts quickly, if he unlocks the M1's secrets, if he bends MotoGP's limits even half as much as he bent those in Superbike, then the entire competitive map could tilt beneath him. But if the project falters, if the chemistry breaks, if the pressure grows too heavy, then he will face the kind of storm that can swallow even the greatest champions. Either way, one truth remains impossible to ignore. Toprak hasn't come to MotoGP to participate, he has come to rewrite something. And when the first lights go out, when the engines scream, when the world looks toward the grid and sees a rider with a legacy already carved in stone stepping into the unknown, the only thing left to wonder is whether MotoGP is prepared for what he's about to unleash.